Chapter 5, Signals of Malice. Months crawled by, my brothers, before I finally said goodbye to the ragged scraps of my plebeian life. I stepped into a new beginning, sharp and brutal. Basic training didn't last long. The system saw something in me from day one. On that very first dawn, I was handed a crisp uniform, the color of shadows and power, a suit made to terrify. Proud as hell, I marched for the leader, my heart beating in sync with the cold rhythm of the state. Now I belonged to the Shadow Intelligence, the SI, the hidden fist behind the public eye. I rode alongside Commander Overseer Drake, his cold eyes always watching, always calculating. From my vantage high above the factory lines and ration queues, I watched the masses shuffle. Loyalists, anti-loyalists, puppets all, none aware of the storm moving over their heads. They deplete our labor economy, they told me. Workers from other lands. The enemy is not outside, it's within. The worker was the enemy of the soldier. When industry no longer needed hands, those hands were purged. The worker became a danger to the leader's vision. Now I was the weapon of the state, prowling the city's underbelly, stamping out resistance, hunting revolutionaries, crushing the undesirable. My comrades soon learned to respect me. A man who obeyed without question, whose loyalty was unbreakable. A ghost in the machine, serving a ruthless order that brooked no mercy. Alarm, 0700. Stand by for truth. The voice seemed angrier than usual. There will be pain and suffering, but what needs to be done must be done. The collective people wanted this, and this is what they are going to get. We will come out ahead in the next year or 100 years. We will indeed come out ahead. Truth on the homeland. The minority worker problem must be dealt with Eglia, Aflad, and Triasia workers. We gave these people homes, food, and water after the Great War. They repay us with diseases, poverty, and cultural diversity. To the working class who have turned their back on the party, by embedding TBR around the city. This is not the collective way. You will be shot. The doomsday clock is in effect set at 2 minutes till midnight. Victory through our leader, Hail Alpha Party. I wore the honor like a shroud, my brothers, overseeing slave labor lines, deportations, and cold-blooded massacres. No soul was outlawed when saving the state. That was the game. On my first day at the helm, we tore through a man's garden, root and soil, searching for the machine gun buried beneath his dirt dreams. We found it, and we found him too. Beat him senseless, left his blood soaking the roots. Opposition? Not tolerated. Our anthem screamed it clear, raw, and merciless. You bleed for the state. We must. We must. You breed for the state. We must. We must. You fight for the state. March. Right foot, left foot, march, march. We die for the state. Fire, fire. We thank the leader. Thank you. I ran with the listeners, those phantom ears pressed to cold walls, hunting whispers of treason in the shadows. With headphones snug, I drank their secret conversations like poison nectar. Lately, the traitors' tongues wagged about returning to nature, escaping this concrete tomb, slipping through some tunnel to open fields, clean air, fresh food. Fools, the lot of them, dreaming of walking away from their signed social contracts, illusions spun by desperation. They don't know the true price of leaving, the cost carved in bones and fire. We got these horrible men, brothers, champions of the opposite of empathy. They feed on cruelty like it's a sacred right. Why must change taste so bitter, so cruel? Placed on the list. Empathy? Just a shiny new word for old compassion, eh? Compassion and empathy, fine, admirable, but they ain't the engines of civilization's machine. No, it's blood and order that drives the gears. Loyalists sneer. Virtually all the people supporting this are relatively well off and will be unaffected by the higher cost of living, or just ignorant to how corrupt the state is. Placed on the list. I'd bet a large portion of the people here arguing for more empathy hardly lift a finger for another person, much less spend a good chunk of their own money supporting them. The party is not coming to an end. Loyalist. Coward. Companies ran wild. Crony capitalists feeding fat on corporate welfare, keeping the flames of war and poverty blazing bright and fierce. Nature burned. Cities burned. A woman stood, voice sharp as broken glass, reading from where the last windmill stopped. Her words cut through the lines like a knife. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My months of training washed away in a flood of doubt. It made me forget Joshi, Mandy, and that flicker of happiness. All the soft things I once held. Had to shove that fake emotion down, lock it tight, and march on with my brothers, no time for weakness. Added to the list. The names on the list weren't rumors. They were real, and they vanished one by one. The lucky ones just disappeared. The rest left behind blood and ruin. Their belongings seized, cataloged, burned. Collective agents swept through like a plague in uniform. I was one of them. Street to street, slums, towers, forgotten corners, knocking, kicking, tearing open doors. Papers. Names. Speak. I wasn't looking for answers. I was looking for permission. An excuse to let the sickness out. Violence wasn't a duty. It was a hunger, and the state fed us well. The listeners said nothing. They always listened. And while they listened, we turned city blocks into meat grinders. Days blurred. An orgy of sanctioned brutality. Screams, silence, ash. They called it cleansing. I called it the only time I felt alive. The lists grew longer, thicker, blood slick with ink and implication. Sometimes we didn't wait for names. Sometimes it was whole blocks, neighborhoods, entire bloodlines. One wrong whisper, one flagged frequency, and the drones would paint red over rooftops. The ash in the sky wasn't from factories. It was from families. I watched mothers scream as their children were torn from their arms and tagged like cargo. I watched them shoved into re-education domes or marched behind the checkpoint fences. Some came back hollow. Most didn't come back at all. We didn't call it genocide. We called it protocol. The bodies piled too fast for the incinerators. We left them in the streets some nights, faces frozen mid-plea. The collective said it was a deterrent. I stopped seeing faces. I started seeing shapes. And I kept going. Knocking, breaking, clearing zones. I told myself I was just following the script. I told myself I had no choice. But deep down, I liked the noise, the chaos, the crack of bone against pavement, the power. There was one girl. I remember her. Maybe 10, maybe less. She wouldn't stop screaming. One of the new recruits told her to shut up, but she didn't, so he silenced her. Right there, skull to concrete. We all just kept walking. Orders, normal. That night, I stared at my hands for hours. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop seeing that slick, wet thud. Her cry folding in on itself like a song cut short. The next morning, I asked for another list, just to drown it out. At some point, the screaming stopped meaning anything. It wasn't silence that followed. It was music. Distant and orchestral. Screeching violins playing in sync with blood spurts. Horns swelling as the airstrikes lit up the skyline. A chorus of bone snapping beneath boots. I found rhythm in it. A kind of worship. We were gods now, weren't we? We didn't just enforce the law. We rewrote it nightly. Brick by brick, corpse by corpse. The ghettos became sandboxes. We kicked through them like children looking for toys, only we buried the dolls ourselves. Sometimes whole families, sometimes pieces. The others called me the listener. I had the ear for betrayal. I could sniff it out in the way a man blinked, or a woman hesitated before saying glory to the leader. I didn't need proof, just the scent. And then it was off to the clearing walls where they were knelt, lined up like livestock, and answered for crimes they didn't yet know they committed. Sometimes I whispered to them before the shot. "You're not real," I'd say. "None of you are. Just data waiting to be deleted." Mandy left a long time ago. Couldn't take the late-night screams, the smell of scorched clothes on my uniform, the way I laughed too long at executions broadcast on the dome net. I didn't stop her. I barely noticed. Her face blurred in my memory like a censored image. It was one of those bastard days, gray and airless, like the sky had given up. We pulled up slow to the corpse of a house, boards nailed like a coffin, windows shut like secrets. No birds, no sound. Just that crawling sense that something inside was still breathing. Commander Overseer Drake and I approached the private stationed out front, stiff as death. The listener's intel says it's occupied, the officer said with a salute, his voice trembling behind his polished calm. Commander Drake turned to me, dry smile carved into his face. Your discretion. Sir, I answered, snapping a salute sharp enough to cut glass. I waved the boys forward. Douse it. All of it. The chemicals glugged out in thick waves, oily, sharp, caustic. They soaked the wood like blood into bandages. Drake lit a match, turned to me with a preacher's grin. Innovation and cost reduction, he mused. Once noble ideas, now painted red or blue by fools. You notice that? They scream far left, far right until the words mean nothing. Nothing at all. Maybe it's time we forget the labels and burn it all down. He flicked the match. Fire caught like hunger, racing along the trail in bright orange veins. It kissed the walls, then bit deep. The house screamed like it remembered. Minutes passed. Then the first howls came. Wet, animal, human. The kind of sound that doesn't come from the throat, but from the soul. Shadows pressed against the boarded windows. Hands, faces, pleas. I didn't flinch. Neither did Drake. He just watched, smiling, as the smoke blackened the air like judgment. Simple workers approving anything in the state. That's what poisoned the collective. I was ordered to fix it. A chance to end the farce of the people thinking they had a voice. I nodded. I understood. TBRS crawled out like roaches. Subversives, traitors, parasites. We exterminated them as such. Alarm, 1200. Stand by for truth. The collective has announced the liquidation of Iglea, and the 9th Alpha Party Army has been dispatched to destroy the ever-growing threat of the archive. Elgea is where they believe the danger originated. Truth on the homeland. Anyone caught out in the open with an archive will be shot. Anyone preaching the archive will be shot. Anyone trying to bring down the glorious Alpha Party will be shot. Archive burnings will be held nightly. Values such as freedom of speech, right to assembly, pluralism, diversity, and open, fair elections with multiple parties all pose a threat to the collective. The doomsday clock is in effect set at half a minute till midnight. Victory through our leader Hail Alpha Party. I was deployed to Iglea, across the atomic sea, to a land rusted with war and soaked in generations of rot. We killed until the trench was brimming, then filled it, then dug another, then another. We kicked down doors, we cleared rooms, we gunned them all. Men, women, children. No discrimination, no hesitation. The muzzle flashes danced across broken windows like camera bulbs on a corpse. Bias had no place in cleansing. Neither did mercy. When I needed to be cleaned, I showered. When my rifle jammed, I oiled it and returned to my work. We lined them up row by row. Volley by volley. A rhythm, a system. How are we doing, Commander? One of my privates asked, wiping blood from his cheek like dust. There are some disappointments, I said. Sometimes the state must tighten its belt. Bleeding hearts aren't well equipped for that kind of precision, so they send us the necessary. A soldier approached me after one of the executions. His hand shook, machine gun cold in his grip. Sir, I don't understand what we're doing. I looked at him for a long moment. Neither did I. You swore your life to the leader. 4 years. You gave him those years. You owe him those years. My voice cracked with rage, louder than I meant it to be. My fist struck the wall beside his head. He has a comprehensive surgical plan. Seal the borders, cleanse the rot from our economy, purge government waste, fraud, and abuse. Everything the last administration poisoned. The radical left, the radical right. They dragged this state to the grave. He's digging it out, brick by brick. I leaned in. I don't care about their opinions. I don't care about their feelings, their families, their goddamned lives. And neither should you. I grabbed his cuffs, shaking him, and something tumbled from his pocket. A small archive, worn, sun-bleached at the edges, where the last windmill stopped. I froze. My heart dropped. My archive. He looked at me like he'd just dropped a stone into the ocean. Eyes wide, terrified, but it was too late. "You read this?" I asked. Quieter now. A hoarse whisper. "You've been reading this?" He didn't answer. Didn't have to. And for the first time in years, I felt something I didn't recognize. It might have been betrayal, or it might have been fear. I dispatched him where he stood, cold and final. His comrades looked on, stunned, some mouthing protests they were too afraid to voice. I couldn't hear them over the ringing in my ears or the thunder in my chest. My fingers clenched around the archive. Where the last windmill stopped. It would not be the last one I'd find that day. I refused to open it. Wouldn't dare. The cover alone made my skin crawl. Something about the calmness in the title, the certainty, the invitation, as if it knew the state's sickness, as if it had a cure. That night, we threw 100 of them into the fire. Or maybe more. The people, too. Whole lineages who'd read, whispered, copied, as if the pages bred in the shadows. A virus, language that passed from breath to breath, eye to eye. Ideas like a virus infecting the masses. Still, the fires brought no relief. I stalked the pyre line from front to back, boots blackened with soot, watching bodies curl and split, black manuscripts shriveling beside them, pages turned to smoke, names erased. But the smoke smelled wrong, not like ash, like memory, like thought refusing to die. The troops stood silent as I screamed. I emptied a full magazine into the mound, bullets chewing through charred limbs and cindered ink. "This is what obedience looks like," I shouted, but my voice broke on the last word. No one responded. No one met my eyes. The fire crackled louder than them all. The descent began like a cough in the dark. Small, harmless, forgettable. Someone paused too long when I gave the order. Another blinked at the wrong moment. A third asked a question. That was all it took. I went personally to each one, room to room, trench to trench. I stepped through mud and ash, pulled them aside quietly, and delivered judgment like a hammer. If they were found in possession of where the last windmill stopped, or even if the rumor existed, I executed them on the spot. No trials, no process, no mercy. Some begged, some ran. A few even turned their rifles on me. None survived. It became difficult. The archive was like a whisper, moving faster than I could crush it. Every time I lit another pyre, another cache turned up. Folded in socks, hidden in latrines, etched onto arms, scrawled in blood on the back of ration slips. I didn't trust my officers anymore. Didn't trust my boots, my gloves, my own mind. I interrogated my closest lieutenant for 5 hours straight before putting a round through his temple. He had smiled too wide during a speech. I saw the windmill in his teeth. What disturbed me most was the feeling that I wasn't purging them. I was purging me. The words in that archive, the phrases they clung to, I recognized them. Old fragments I'd scribbled when I was younger, angrier, hopeful. My own voice echoed back at me in the last words of the condemned. It felt like I was hunting ghosts made of my past. Hunting myself. I hadn't slept in 3 days. My face had aged a decade. The uniform clung to my skin like a funeral shroud. My bones ached from the tour. Endless trenches, endless fires. Each bullet I chambered felt heavier than the last.